Welcome to the ANEW Insight Podcast, empowering and inspiring your journey to optimal health. Hosted by Dr. Supatra Tovar, clinical psychologist, registered dietitian, fitness expert, and author of Deprogram Diet Culture. Rethink your relationship with food, heal your mind, and live a diet-free life. I follow my guests' journey to optimal health, providing you with the keys to unlock your own wellness path. Tune in and evolve with us. Welcome back to the ANEW Insight Podcast. We are back for the second half of our interview with board psychiatrist, author, and ruthless compassion podcaster, Dr. Marcia Sirota. Marcia gave us some invaluable insight into her inspiration to spread her message of ruthless compassion. I cannot wait to pick her brain some more. Welcome back, Marcia.
Thanks.
So, we are going to talk about kindness warriors and your book, Be Kind, Not Nice. Now, in this book, you discuss the pitfalls of people pleasing. We talked a little bit about people pleasing in the last section. What strategies do you recommend for individuals to break free from people pleasing?
There's a lot of different things they can do, including I forbid them sometimes. I say, okay, no people pleasing for a week. You're not allowed to do anything for anybody for a week. And they're going to feel really anxious. And I just say, watch your feelings. Do a mindfulness exercise. Just do nothing for anyone else. Just take care of yourself. And if you have kids, of course, or pets. But other than that, don't do anything for anyone and see how you feel and watch the beliefs. Nobody's going to love me. I'm going to be all alone. I'm going to be rejected. It's going to be horrible. And then watch what actually happens and see if what you believe and what you fear actually turns out. Because maybe it won't. Maybe the people around you actually do love you just for who you are. Or maybe you're surrounded by a bunch of users and everyone will leave you. And that's not because you're a bad person. It's because you've surrounded yourself by users and maybe you need a revamping of your friend circle. But that's one of the things I've done with people. It's a little bit of a ruthless exercise.
I can imagine.
It's just to work on building self-love and self-esteem, starting by seeing that the things that happened to you when you were young, the bad things that happened to you, were not about you, right? If you experienced neglect, abuse, exploitation, crazy making, it was about the people who did it to you, whether they were your parents, guardians, teachers, people in the community, respected authority figures, whoever, anybody who hurt you or neglected you or exploited you. It wasn't about you, it was about them. And that's a message that people have to really work on to disconnect what happened to them with who they are and what they might have deserved. And that's the beginning of building self-love and seeing that they are worthy, they are deserving, they are entitled to good things, not more than anyone else. And there's a basic message I really want to get across to people, which is that because you exist, you are lovable. Every existing entity is lovable.
Yes.
You know, tree, person, puppy, dog, everybody's lovable. And if we can recognize that there's nothing special about me. Okay, maybe I hate myself, but there's nothing special about me. I'm not different from anyone else. And the question I often ask my patients in psychotherapy is, would you say these kinds of things? Would you think these kinds of things toward anyone else? Oh, goodness, no. Would you talk to anyone the way your inner critic talks to you? Never. I say, what's different about you then? What makes you different from all the billions of people on the planet? Nothing. I go, exactly. You're not that special. You're just like everyone else, which means that you're perfectly imperfect and equally lovable to everyone else. And so when they see how illogical their thinking is, because they would never be that cruel or abusive to anyone, and they would never look down on them in that way, they can see that they're no different. And that helps them to build that self-love, to not take it personally what happened to them, and to see that they're no different from anyone else. That's the foundation of self-esteem. And then from self-esteem, we can work on realizing that people will love you if they're capable of love. I always say love is given freely or not at all. So when people are capable of loving, they will love you. And if they're not capable, there's nothing you can do. And so just be a regular, pleasant human being. And those who are capable of loving you will.
Yes. I always have my clients ask themselves, what is my role in this situation? And that really helps clarify for them. My role is I am a friend. I'm here to listen. I'm here to provide support.
And then we ask, what are you performing outside of your role? I'm doing everything for this person, or I'm always paying, or I'm doing this. Is that your role? And it is not. And I think really clarifying that for people, especially people pleasers, helps them discern what they should give and what they shouldn't give. I'm super curious though, when you do that first exercise with people where they cannot, people please, they're not allowed to give except for where it's absolutely necessary. What do you normally see? Do you see the gamut?
I had one patient, she was such an intense people pleaser that she basically lost every single friend. And she had a lot of quote unquote friends, but none of them were friends. They were just users. She lost every single friend, but then she was able to gradually make new friends and have people in her life who actually like her for who she is. But yeah, but she also was happy to lose them because she was exhausted and depressed and miserable and angry all the time because she was always having to do so much. So it wasn't working. I've also seen people who stopped doing it and everyone was like, oh, this is much better. I'm glad you're not exhausting yourself because it makes me uncomfortable when you do too much. So they were around compassionate people who are happy for them to do less. So I've seen everything. I've seen it all because it really depends. Sometimes it's just the luck of the draw. You happen to meet some nice people or you happen to meet some terrible people. It's just the luck of the draw. But it's a hard exercise for people to do because the anxiety that gets provoked by letting go of any compulsive behavior is high. But it really teaches you a lot of stuff. Number one, it shows you who's around you, and you really want to know who's around you. You want to know if you're surrounded by users and abusers or by people who love you regardless. It's a really important thing to know. And you also want to know that it's exhausting and it's inauthentic to do it, and it makes you mad and sad and feel bad. So it's just, there's no payoff.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Now, we're talking about being kind, not nice, and you have a term, kindness warrior.
Yes.
Can you explain what that is and how can we become one?
So to me, a kindness warrior is a person who does the right thing, even if it's not the popular thing or even if it's not well understood. So back in the olden days when women were suffragettes and they were working hard to get women the vote, nobody around them like that. They were all, you're troublemakers, you're difficult, but they wanted other women to have enfranchisement. They wanted them to be part of society. And in order to be part of society, you have to have a vote. You have to be part of the political system. And so these were kindness warriors. I think that people who go around rescuing animals are kindness warriors.
Great.
Yeah. People who, work in social activism or help others who are in bad circumstances are kindness warriors. Whenever you take a risk, go out on a limb, say something that might not be the popular thing, but you're doing it out of a place of loving kindness and compassion, that's a kindness warrior because you might get pushback. People might disapprove of you, but you're doing it regardless because it's the right thing to do. And yeah, it takes quite a lot of courage to be a kindness warrior. And you have to have done a little work on yourself so that you can tolerate the pushback. But it's extremely fulfilling. All the studies that have shown that being a giver is much more rewarding than being a receiver.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we can say that as being, therapists ourselves. I don't think that there's anything more rewarding than sitting with someone and helping them through something so difficult as trauma or whatever they are going through. I think I just never heard it termed as kindness warrior. And I think how you're delineating it is that you may have to do things that are harder.
Yeah.
You may have to fight certain battles in order for people or animals to be safe, but you're doing that from deep levels of kindness and compassion.
And for example, I do cat rescue and I say to my friends, it's not for the faint of heart because there's a lot of sad stories, right? And so you have to be a bit of a warrior because you have to also be strong and willing to tolerate outcomes that are not the ones you want or just the sadness of the situation. Mm-hmm. So being a warrior is not just fighting, but it's also being able to tolerate the difficulty in general of the fight, of whatever the program or the project or the mission you're on, right? If you're trying to do good things, it's always going to be difficult. There's always going to be setbacks. And being a warrior, having a warrior mentality is, I'm going to keep going even when it's hard. I'm going to keep going even when people don't understand, don't approve, push back at me, because it's the right thing and I want to do this thing. And so I'm going to be able to bounce back even when I have a bad day or a bad minute. And I'm going to do all the things that I know that will replenish me and make me feel better, because I have to keep going. And so that's a kindness warrior. It's fighting on, and it's being strong in the face of adversity.
I love this. And you impart this in therapeutic treatment with your clients. You also, I think, integrate a bunch of different kinds of therapeutic modalities. Yeah. Tell me how you do this, and how do you address issues like addiction, trauma, relationship challenges? How do you do it all?
Yeah, right. I really do. I think I'm the kind of girl who goes to the smorgasbord, and I want to have a little bit of everything on my plate.
Me too.
So that's how I do therapy too, right? It's like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, whatever works.
Yep.
And over the years, I've taken a little bit of everything that I've learned, because if it works, why not? So it's not like one particular system, but it's a bunch of things that seem to work effectively. But I have it sort of focused around that, the child, adult, parent, and the inner warrior and the inner wise person. And so really getting the person to feel empowered and safe within themselves, and to have that self-love and self-compassion. That's the beginning of everything. And I really work with the ruthless compassion. So facing the truth, really seeing what happened, because one of the first obstacles is getting past avoidance and denial. And then grieving. We need to actually make space for our grief, and crying, journaling, doing art, doing movement, doing whatever it takes to move that grief through our bodies, because it gets embedded in our bodies. Letting go, and so that we can let go of our pain. And then instead of using compulsive behaviors, which I'll talk about in a second, to take care of ourselves, finding activities and relationships that are meaningful and fulfilling and enriching, and actually feed our body, mind, soul, spirit, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to go to the addiction piece. So I feel like addiction is really a trauma response. It's a way of addressing unmet needs or inner emotional wounds. And we get caught up in a compulsive behavior because the addictive behavior gives us a dopamine hit, which then makes us crave the behavior more. And we also have a psychological belief that more of this behavior, even though it's the wrong behavior, it's not working because it's not enough. So if I do more of it, it'll finally work. But more of the wrong solution is not going to turn into the right solution. Mm-hmm. So the way to heal addiction through ruthless compassion is to really understand what we're craving. So if we're craving food, maybe what we're craving is nurturing or soothing or distraction. If we're craving alcohol or drugs, maybe we want oblivion, or we want a social disinhibitor. And so that's something. If we're craving gambling, maybe we need a high, we need a distraction, right? We need to look at what we're craving, what we're yearning for deep down inside, and then find a way to give ourselves what we really need. If we feel like we need a piece of chocolate cake, I ask my patients, what's underneath that piece of chocolate cake? What do you want? You want something sweet in your life? You want something rich and nurturing? Maybe what you need is a hug. Mm-hmm. Maybe you need to have a conversation with someone who really loves and accepts you as you are. Think about it. Maybe you need to move your body and dance and just feel joyful, right? There are lots of things that we can do that will give us what we need, because the problem with pursuing addiction is that we're filling ourselves up with all this empty calories, and we still feel as empty and as hurt and as lonely and as sad as we felt. In fact, more so because we haven't been putting our energy into feeding what we really need and healing those wounds. So addiction makes our wounds get bigger, our needs get bigger. So when we are actually giving ourselves what we need and healing those wounds, we feel better and better. And then we have less and less of an urge to engage in the addictive behavior. So that's how I address addiction through ruthless compassion.
Wow. Give me an example. Say somebody is struggling with alcoholism. What's the first step that they would need to take if they've gained this awareness? Okay, I am doing this because I want to escape from stress.
Well, I think you have to have a kind of multidisciplinary approach because they also have a physical addiction. So they have to work on the physical addiction part, right? They got to detox safely so that they're not having physical cravings, because you can talk and talk, but if you're having physical cravings, you're fighting a losing battle. So you have to deal with the physical part always. And even if it's not a quote unquote typical physical addiction, that dopamine response in our brain gets set up. So any kind of compulsive behavior becomes a physical addiction in our brain. So you got to deal with that. You have to detox off of whatever it is you're doing.
How do they do that?
Well, there's lots of different ways. You can do a detox program. You can do rehab. You can do a supervised detox through an inpatient or outpatient center. There's lots of different ways for people who don't have a typical addiction. There's groups that you can go to, hospital programs, different programs that help you sort of detox off your addiction of choice. And then I would work on self-trust, because if you want to escape, it's because you don't trust yourself to face the truth. So my first step in dealing with any kind of pain or need is face the truth. So you want to escape because you don't feel that you're capable. You don't feel like you're strong enough. So helping the person to understand that they are actually not that helpless child that they once were when they were experiencing trauma. So they're still identified with it. They're actually an empowered adult, and help them see examples of their life right now in which they are actually empowered. Look at your relationship with your spouse, with your kids, at work. Look at all the things that you're doing that are empowered. Look at all the ways in life that you have agency, that you're effective, that you have a voice, that you have a say, that you have influence, and help them to recognize with real life examples that they have power and that they don't have to run away from this particular thing that makes them anxious, because they can actually face it and it won't kill them and it won't drive them crazy. And remind them it didn't kill you or drive you crazy when you were little and helpless. It certainly won't do that when you're now a strong person who has power and influence in your life. And so helping them find that self-trust so that they can turn and face that thing, and face it in a therapeutic setting with support, so that if they get really scared, we can work on doing some breathing exercises, some grounding exercises, help them to just keep staying calm and face that thing that they're afraid of, and see that this big boogeyman in their head is really just this tiny little thing that they've, of course, because they were a child, they've blown it out of proportion, because everything to a child seems bigger and more overwhelming. And to an adult, it's actually, not that big. And we just have to gain that perspective.
Wow, I love this. And I think that it seems like almost all of your messaging is about finding your own empowerment. And I think that where they have had no agency before, you are really encouraging their self-agency. And I think that is beautiful. You don't actually tend to hear it worded in such a way. I think trauma treatment tends to be more about finding safety and looking for healing. But I really love this empowerment aspect. And I'm sure that a lot of this has inspired you to go into your podcast and to spread the word. Give us a picture of why you wanted to start this podcast, and where has it taken you? What's your journey been like?
It's been so much fun. I started it because I really wanted to hear people's stories. I love people's stories. Those stories are golden because everyone has their unique experience. And although human beings are so similar in so many ways, our experience is so different and so unique. And so hearing every person's story has been so much fun, such a joy. And I've gotten to talk to so many amazing people who I never would have met in my life, including you.
Yeah.
So having this podcast has connected me with so many marvelous people. And I've really seen that there are some commonalities in our human experience. Even though our experience is tremendously diverse, we all want love. We all want to feel safe. We all want to feel like we belong. We all want to feel like our lives have some kind of meaning and focus and purpose. And I have also found that the people who start out suffering more but suffer less are those who take responsibility for themselves and don't walk around saying, I am a victim. You guys owe it to me to be nice to me because I've been hurt. They're the ones who say, I was hurt and now I have to do something about it. And I can ask for help for sure, but I don't have to identify myself as this victim for the rest of my life and always walk around with a chip on my shoulder and expect to have kid glove treatment because something bad happened to me. Because really, everyone goes through hardship. We all suffer. We all have, just because of being alive, we all have difficulties. But those who really thrive are the ones who take responsibility and look for that empowerment through compassion, through wisdom, through personal growth, through facing the truth. So I think those were the biggest lessons that I saw through this podcast.
Who do you seek out as guests? You had me on there and I loved it. And I was able to talk about my book and my mission of deprogramming people out of diet culture and creating a revolution. Who else do you have on your podcast?
I have a combination of professionals and also lay people. So the professionals are people like you who are doing interesting work, which I love to share, and whose work has been helping people and is meaningful. I also have people who've gone through adversity. We've just finished editing a wonderful podcast of a man named David Roche, and he's a person who was born with a facial difference, and he has had his own version of adversity, being different looking. And he is the most charming, lovely, delightful person. And he has a message. And he was saying how you people who have regular faces many of you have never learned how to find your inner beauty. And he said, people like me, we've had to find our inner beauty, and we have something to teach you. And I thought, what a wonderful message, right?
Right.
So I have a variety of people, but they all have something, some story that's meaningful and some really important message, personal, to share. Everyone has a personal message. That's why when I go on the podcast, I always like to ask my guests, what made you do the work you're doing? What is your journey? How did you get started? Because often it is starting from some adversity or some experience that they had, which made them realize that this was the path that they needed to go on. Mm-hmm. I've spoken to people who've had tremendous loss and had to find their inner resilience. I've had many interesting guests who've gone through some quite dark days, but then because of that have had profound growth and evolution. So it's really wonderful to talk to both professionals and quote unquote regular people and hear their journeys.
I love that. As far as this podcast, my hope and takeaway for people is that I want them to be empowered to go on their own journey to reach optimal health. What is your deepest hope and desire for people to take away from your podcast?
It's that although we all suffer, and although we can't necessarily control or choose the stuff that happens to us, we always have a choice about how we respond in life. Mm-hmm. And even though maybe things happened to us when we were little and we really didn't have a choice back then, we have a choice now in how we address it. And so that empowerment, that personal responsibility can really mitigate a lot of our suffering. And I really want people to suffer less. That's my mission, is for people to have less suffering than necessarily they would have right now, because there's always going to be some, because that's life, right?
Yes.
But if they can do the things that are available to them, to see things differently, to do things differently, to think about things differently, to interact with people differently, that's my goal. And there will be less suffering, and the world will be a more joyful and compassionate place. Yay.
Oh my gosh, I'm so with you. In my dietetic internship during the orientation week that I had, it was through Sodexo. One of the biggest takeaways was one of my preceptors said, never suffer. If you need a break, get up, take a break. If you want something, ask for it. We're not here to imprison you. Don't suffer. And I love that. And I think it's so important. I don't think we tend to give ourselves permission. And we tend to sit in uncomfortable situations or do uncomfortable things because we feel like we're under some kind of mandate from others.
I call them the bullshoulds.
The bullshoulds. I love that. And I love that's your takeaway. You're just one of the most empowering people that I have met. And I love that you are imparting this message on your clients. They're so lucky, but just everyone who listens to your podcast and hears these stories do unite us. And I think really being able to empathize and hear other people's stories help inform ours. So I'm so happy that you're out there doing this for people and that you get to spread this message of kindness and ruthless compassion. Tell people how they can get a hold of you, work with you, follow you. Give us all the info.
Well, they can go to my website, and it's marciasirotamd.com. So MD for medical doctor. And I have pretty much everything there, and they can sign up for my free biweekly newsletter where I curate content. So there's always fun content. I have 2 podcasts, actually. I have another podcast called Real Mental, REEL Mental, where I speak with film people about current films, and we talk about the psychological aspects of the film. So do they get it right? Do they get it wrong, these films? And how do they portray mental health? Because I think that we can really see ourselves through those kinds of stories as well. So there's lots of content up there and lots of fun stuff. And yeah, they can find pretty much everything there. And yeah, I have a YouTube channel. I have so much stuff, TikTok, everything.
How do you ever find time just to chill out?
No, I really do. I'm very lucky. I'm not good in a lot of stuff, but I've always been good at time management for some reason. And so I always carve out time to rest. After this podcast, I'm going to go and chill out. So yes, I definitely make time to rest and recharge. I go for my hour-long walk every single day, rain or shine, snow or sleet. And I think you can't walk the walk and talk to the talk if you're not really doing it. So I agree what I preach. Like Gandhi once said, his mother brought a kid in to him and said, tell my kid not to eat meat. And so he said, come back in 2 weeks. And he says to the kid in 2 weeks, okay, don't eat meat. And she goes, why didn't you say that 2 weeks ago? And he said, 2 weeks ago, I was still eating meat. So he wanted to walk the walk and talk the talk. So
wow.
I'm not comparing myself to Gandhi. Let me just say that. But I like his message. I like
the course
of try to practice what you preach.
And I don't think he would mind you comparing yourself to him. And I am totally in agreement with you. I have what I call militant self-care. It's militant because it's mandatory. And I feel like if I don't complete it, and it is pretty extensive, I'm going to admit, I don't feel like I have what I need to give to my clients, to my family, to my pets, nothing. So
I find this warrior to yourself.
Yes. And I think if women especially can pick up on that message to put the oxygen mask on themselves first, take care of themselves, feed themselves well, move their bodies, they are so much better able to take care of everyone else. And so you do walk the walk, you do talk the talk, you do everything, Marcia. Oh my gosh. There's kind of nothing that you don't do. And I admire that so much. I could talk to you forever and ever, but I'm going to go let you have your nap or whatever it is that you need to chill out after this. Thank you so much for joining me, Marcia.
Thank you. It's been so much fun talking with you again.
Yay. Well, we'll have to do it again soon. And I really want to talk about the movie podcast that you have, because that's so interesting. And we could go on for hours about different shows, The Substance being one of them I just watched. Oh my gosh. Okay, everybody, we're out of time. Tune in next time for the next exciting episode of the ANEW Insight Podcast. We are looking forward to our next interview, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning into the ANEW Insight Podcast. Please remember, the contents shared on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. You can find us anywhere podcasts are streaming, on YouTube at my.anew.insight and at anew-insight.com under the ANEW Insight Podcast tab. And follow us on our socials at my.anew.insight on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads for more updates. Tune in next time and evolve with us.